Right, we're back. Part 3, yeah.
Part three.
This week we're going to touch on extreme personal responsibility with Neil Smedley back again. So we're going to kick it off with the obvious question: what is extreme personal responsibility?
Extreme personal responsibility. It's not a phrase you hear very often. It is essentially being brave enough and courageous enough to ask the question of yourself: is how much of your current situation, your current trauma, your current pain, are you directly, personally responsible for? Not what role your family played, or your father, or your mother, or your boss, or your abusive partner. How much of it are you directly responsible for? And then trying to find a way to cloud out all of the other incidentals, because they are incidentals, because you can't control them, but you can control what you're responsible for. So how do you crowd that out completely and focus purely on what you did that got you here? Which sounds straightforward, but it's not. And it's not straightforward because to do that, and to be clear, this is something I've started doing the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah, and I'm almost 40, so that's all it takes to figure this stuff out. Is it requires an enormous amount of maturity, an enormous amount of courage, because there are a million reasons why things go wrong for us and why things go right for us. Now, when things go right for us, we're inclined to just kind of say, well, look how amazing I am, look at all these great things I've done. When things go wrong for us, even when we can recognise we've played a role in that, we're also inclined to say, but if so-and-so didn't do what they did, and if this hadn't happened, and if it wasn't for this thing and this factor, I would have been more successful. So it's being as brutal with yourself as you can possibly be about the role you've played in your own demise.
So to go back to it, why do people put reasons why maybe they fail or they suffer or they don't do something a certain way onto any other person and or situation that's happened to them?
Well, 2 reasons. I mean, one because you have to, because there are reasons why we fail and there's reasons why we succeed, there's reasons why we fuck up. So trying to find reasons, all we're really doing is trying to find a narrative that explains the situation that we're in. All right, so it places that situation in a context that we can readily understand and then decimate. So from that point of view, it's important. But the other reason that we do it is because we are not naturally inclined to turn the mirror inward and turn it on ourselves. And to do that is painful. To accept that your relationship broke down because of your shitty behaviour is painful, or that your business failed because you're just not a great business. That's painful. It's painful to do that, and nobody wants to do that. So what we tend to do, and I was a master of doing this, is that we know that we can't offload all responsibility onto external factors. Right? We know we can't do that because nobody would buy that story. So what we tend to do is say, okay, I'm going to accept maybe 10% of this and say, yeah, I know I could have done things differently, but. And that's what we do. And then we hide behind the fact that we've taken a little bit of responsibility. In fact, there's an amazing quote, I'm going to completely forget who said it. I think it was Fernando Pessoa, who was a Portuguese philosopher, who said that he wore his knowledge of defeat like a banner of victory. I thought that's a really deep thing to say. It's almost like when you're telling somebody their failures, they go, no, I know. Like you can't tell me anything about me. I understand it, and that's almost like a banner of victory. The fact that they know that they've failed, and they hide behind that. We hide behind that. I hid behind that.
And how do you actually go about changing that? Is it like a brutal, like ripping off a plaster, like just change over time?
I see it as a progress. I think it's more of a small progress of self-reflection.
Yeah.
Of how much you're looking at on your action on everyday things of what you're doing. I think it's going to be as simple as taking your kid to school and that conversation that you have on the way with them, to way deeper things of how could I make my relationship with my partner better. Yeah. I think it's I tend to agree. I think everyone's route to these kind of realizations is different, and I get that. But obviously we all have the same. You good? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's just
sorry.
It's a bit level.
So everyone's route to these realizations is different, but ultimately the destination we have is the same. So, is it a process? Well, yeah, technically, yeah, everything is a process, right? But equally, sometimes the best way to learn to swim is to jump in at the deep end with someone that's been there and kind of see what happens. I think sometimes we become lost in processes. And I've seen that with people in my life, people in my business. I've seen it with myself, where you are constantly constantly engaged in a process. You are constantly engaged in a journey, but you never arrive at any destination. And that, ironically, gives us another place to hide. Because if you're constantly working on something, then you can justify never, ever actually fucking fixing that thing that you're working on. So at least you're constantly engaged. Look, I'm engaged, I'm doing it. The point isn't to be constantly engaged in a journey. The point is to arrive at a destination, then pick a new destination, and then go on a new journey. That's the point of life. It's not to be constantly engaged. So, yes, it is a journey, but we have to be careful that we don't stay on that journey too long. So sometimes, like, to use your metaphor, pulling off the plaster is the best way to do it.
And so it kind of ties into something that I heard and read recently, and it was about, I think it's Anne Frank. She said something like, "Oh, how much better would people be if they just took a bit of time every day to reflect on all the stuff they did?" And then Ryan Holiday says it in the book "Stillness is the Key." He says, "Journal every thought you have, and it'll fucking embarrass you to not do all the shitty things."
Yeah.
And I heard it and I was like, oh fuck, I should actually do that. Because because we drive loads, we'll drive a fair bit. I have some fucking mad thoughts in my head. Some are great, some are a bit like I wouldn't share them with fucking anyone. But if I wrote them down and they were in a fucking book and I was like, fuck me, someone could see that.
Yeah.
I think it would definitely make me change way faster. Like way faster.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that was the reason for me saying that is, are the things people can actually do, not a process, but can they implement something into their life?
Yeah, so that's not a process, that's an implementation. So you're right. So yeah, journaling's amazing. It's actually, for clarity, it's not something I do, but it's something that I absolutely should do because I'm aware of how helpful it is in those situations. I used to do it when I was a teenager, actually. But anything that makes you more aware, anything, whether that's journaling, you do that every day, or whether it's just making sure that you surround yourself in terms of your inner circle with people that are going to call you out on your bullshit. Because essentially that's all it is. It's just bullshit. And if you're surrounded by people that are passive in the way in which they deal with you, then you'll never grow. You will never ever find a way out of your own internal bullshit. There's what's he called? The Soviet writer. He wrote the Gulag Archipelago, which essentially was his journey through the Soviet food camps, and he had written there that he was looking around the camps and there was poverty and evil and malevolence just everywhere all around him, and obviously everyone was blaming the Soviet government who were to blame, but he wasn't concerned with that. He was concerned with trying to find out what it was that he did specifically. What did he do to land himself here? Now it seems like a really extreme point to make because he didn't get himself into what was essentially a workers' camp, but he wanted to know what role he played there, and he reversed engineered his entire life from the point of being sent to the workers' camp right back to when he was a boy. So what have I done? What role have I played in me getting here? And that was the thing that kept him sane and got him through that experience. And it's an heroic thing to do because the figure of blame was obvious. It was the authority and the government that did this atrocious thing. It would be akin to a Jew in Auschwitz having the fortitude to look around them amidst all of that injustice and say, what did I do that landed me here? And that's, and obviously the answer to that isn't straightforward. No. But it takes a miraculous sort of mindset to say, no, clearly I'm not responsible for everything that's occurred, but what could I have done differently? And for instance, for Dostoevsky, one of the things was in his 20s, early and mid-20s, he was a member of the Communist Party. He was a member of the party that later imprisoned him and committed this act of atrocity. So even on a very micro scale, he played a role. Now, that isn't to say that any of these things would not have occurred if he would have behaved differently. But he was interested in really knowing what he could have done differently that may have changed the course of those events. And that, for me, is heroic. What a heroic thing to be able to do. Because the figure of your blame is so obvious and it's so clear and it was so easy just to point the finger and say it's because of them. And there's truth in that. Don't get me wrong, there's truth in that. But to then elevate yourself above that and say, yes, that is true. All of these negative things occurred to me that I couldn't control, but what did I do? What could I not have done that would have prevented this or perhaps changed the course of my life? And that's a heroic thing to do.
Yeah. So nowadays, what do you feel like do you think people have an abundance of options to just shift responsibility more than ever? Or do you feel like it's just
It's almost, I don't know, I see it as like multitasking, right? You see people getting better at multitasking and doing a million things at once and feeling productive. But really, they're just sort of like kind of wasting time, you can say. You know, you're not, you're kind of compartmentalising everything and putting it to the side and not being honest to yourself.
Yeah, we're just hiding. I mean, and now more than ever, I think we've mentioned this loads of times on the other pods we've done. There's just so many places to hide, and there's so many ways for you to look good to the crowd and play to the crowd, to virtue signal. There's so many ways for us to hide our individual responsibility collectively in groups under the guise of identity politics. So we align ourselves to various groups, to gay and homosexual groups, to trans rights groups, to feminist groups, to Black Lives Matter groups, to vegan groups, and all of that, it just gives us huge places to hide from our personal responsibility. So it's never been easier to hide, ever. And that's one of the problems, is that now as a culture, we're becoming less and less, less and less concerned with the sovereignty of the individual, if you like, and more concerned with what is your group identity, to what group do you belong. And that becomes more important than who are you as an individual and what role do you play as an individual in your own demise, your own success, and the demise and success of the society in which you live.
Ultimately as well, I kind of feel that as well, that those divides, those groups that people can run to, it feels like that divides people even more because they start to associate with those groups and, seeing everybody else as outsiders to that cause. Yeah,
it's tribal. I mean, we're tribal creatures in one sense. So that's understandable. But all these things do is they seek to reduce the uniqueness of us as individuals down to nothing more than a skin colour or a sexual orientation or the diet that you have, and then you are reduced to just that. You have a black man, you have a gay man, you're a straight man, you're a vegan, you're a meat eater, and we reduce all of that down to just those labels.
It's kind of a double-edged sword though, because if someone goes and they're in a group, when you look at that group, you'll be like, oh, they're vegan, I'm probably just not going to talk to them because they're just going to get on at me about something. And then you've automatically put a 30-year-old person with 30-year life experiences into a single word bracket and fucked them off forever, basically. It's kind of mad, isn't it?
And you assume that you have got an accurate grasp on their entire being based on that one part of their character,
exactly.
Which is entirely incidental when you think about it. Yeah. Your sexual orientation is incidental, your skin colour is incidental, your diet is incidental. But as soon as you make these things defining parts of your being, then you've fucked it. Because then you've sacrificed your sovereignty as an individual and you've given it away to labels and to group status. And what we need now more than ever is individuals that are going to change that dynamic.
Why do you think people want to hide within groups, even though they'll be on Instagram following all these people that claim, like even someone that's great, so like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, someone that, not even pick like an influencer, pick someone that's doing something amazing. They look at them and think, fuck, that's so good. But then they don't actually want to be that shining individual, even on a smaller scale. You're saying that, they might push off that responsibility. Why do you think that is? Like fear or?
No, I don't think it's fear. Or maybe in one sense it is. I think the answers to that is incredibly simple. It's because being an Elon Musk or a Bill Gates, or forget those guys. Those guys are the pinnacle. Being the best version of you is fucking hard. It's hard. You guys have done this podcast and done amazing, got it off the ground. How hard was this in the early days? How many times did you just want to walk away? I started my business 10 years ago and I have no clue how I'm still in business. That's how hard it's been just to get to this point. Staying in shape is hard. Staying in love is hard. Keeping a relationship going is hard. These things are brutally hard. So what we do as a way of circumventing the fact that we're just not brave enough to engage in that struggle is we say, well, there's only one Elon Musk. Well, that guy was in great shape. He's got amazing genetics. Well, you two are lucky. You're soulmates. You just found each other at the right time, And it utterly undermines the insane amount of hard work that's gone into those things. That's gone into that physique or that business or that relationship that's lasted for 20 years. These things don't happen naturally. They don't occur. And I think anytime you embark on a journey of self-betterment, whatever it may be, whether you want to, do better with the gym, look better naked, you want to deepen your relationship, start a business, you realise really early on that it's fucking tough. Like brutally tough. And it takes a special kind of person to continue to walk on that path. It does. And you're a special person from the outset, which not many of us are, or you become a special person in the face of that challenge, and you kind of grow as you're going along, or you revert back into the crowd. And that's what most people do. They revert back into the crowd, and then they justify it. Well, I'm too busy. I'd love to look like that, but I'm too busy, and I've got the kids. And the interesting thing about these excuses is that they're legitimate. Like, they're not lies. Most people are too busy. Yeah, most people have got an insane amount of responsibility. You know, I'm a father. I understand that. Most people have got things in their life that are so challenging they don't even know how to get through the day. So these things are real. They're real excuses. The problem is they're not insurmountable. And that's the difference. It's not like they're not real. It's not like you don't have a million justifiable reasons to quit. You do. You know, I've got very justifiable reasons to sell up and go back and get a 9 to 5 with a secure income. Like, trust me, that's gone through my mind 1,000 times in the last 10 years. There's real reasons. And that's the problem. It's a problem that these reasons, they are real and they are justifiable, but they're not insurmountable. So then it comes back to how much do you want the things that you claim you want?
Yeah.
I guess that kind of full circles to as well as how much is that pit in there for people to make the change as well?
How much is what?
The pain to make the change.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, the thing is
it a choice, or do you think it's a choice for people to rip that plaster off, or do you think a lot of the time it becomes to personal circumstances?
It's definitely personal, mate. Do you know, we was chatting the other day, and there was like, oh, you used to, like, we was joking the other day, and it's like, I used to be like 17 stone 10, and I got to a point where I was like, I'm just not going to be fucking fat anymore.
Are you like a fat 1710, not like a ripped 1710?
Like a biggest fridge freezer you ever seen, mate. Like,
I'm like 1710 now.
Big, but imagine like me, I'm 1410 now.
Wow.
So 3 stone bigger.
It's a big difference.
Same height, whatever. So I was just I was a big guy. I didn't look fat because I was tall, thank God.
Yeah.
But I just went one day, literally, it must have been one day, I was like, I downloaded MyFitnessPal, I was like, that's it, fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah, you did actually.
And I just went, done, lean. But it was just that one thing, like, I don't know what it was like a trigger, and I was like,
but
yeah.
you became obsessed with it, I remember.
It was
time
like
you eat something,
I would bang it in, I was like, if I were going to get there, it was like, yeah, I'll fucking track everything to do it. But that's what I wanted to do.
But this is interesting, and this came back to what I mentioned in the last pod, is that what was it that triggered that decision for you? Like, what was it? Was there a moment? Was there a glance in the mirror?
Nah, it was a compound effect of a few things. It was like, oh, I'd have to like go buy a different suit every fucking conference I had to do, because I was like a fucking size bigger or something. Like, my waist would be like fucking bigger or shit like that. Like, little things, and I was like.
But can you remember in that moment we went, fuck it, I'm downloading the app, I'm done.
I'd literally just finished the conference, and I think I must have seen like a picture of myself. I was like, fuck me, I look fat as shit. And I was like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I'm literally fucking done with that. And I just started. I was like, bang, I'm just gonna smash the cardio till I drop literally just physical weight off me, because I was in shape before that. Like, the other effect of it is I had a thyroid problem, so I went from I've been 11 stone, I've been 1710, I've been in shape either side of that, and I've lost both bodies to either circumstance. So I could have been like, yeah, well, I've got a thyroid problem, so I'll fuck it off forever. And I could have done it both ways. Like, when I got thin, I built back up. When I got fat, I cut back down.
So you had a reason. You had a justifiable reason to be the way you were.
A medical fucking reason that I take medication to this day. I have to take for the rest of my life. But it's not an excuse.
No.
But it was one of those, boom, do it, change it.
But you felt on something there that I think is essential, and I think I spoke about it with you guys before, and I spoke about it with Steve Ward a few weeks ago, is that, so you essentially then, in that moment, you hit on a point of personal repulsion, personal disgust. Yeah? These are not words we like to use when we talk about ourselves. We're told not to have that negative self-talk. I genuinely don't believe, I've never seen it occur, and it's certainly not occurred for me personally or the people around me. I don't believe you ever change shit in your life, anything at all, on a macro or micro level, until you become utterly repulsed with the person that you are. And I'm talking about meaningful, lasting change. You don't ever achieve that until you become so fucking disgusted with the person that you are, or the situation you've got yourself into, or so repulsed with the relationship that you've allowed to deteriorate, until you get to a point where you are fucking just repulsed by your own action. Yeah, whether that's physically, emotionally, whatever it may be, you will not change. You will not change. And I think that's huge. I think you have to get to a point where you are repulsed with the person that you've become. Now, that sounds extreme, and I get it, and it is extreme, but change is extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Change is extreme. To be successful is extreme. Technically we're not built for that. We're built really, you're going to talk about it in a genetic, biological sense, we're built only for reproduction and survival. Okay? So we now live in a society where those two things are guaranteed. Even the poorest among us will eat and be homed, generally speaking. So our immediate needs are all met. Yeah? So anything over and above that comes purely from your decision as an individual to be more than you currently are. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing else. So if you speak to somebody who's severely overweight, and I know people like this who have been overweight for 20 years, yeah, and they would like to be a size 10, for instance, yeah, or the guy, they would like to be the guy in the gym with a six pack, and if they could take a pill that would magic that, they would take that pill and do it. They wish for it, and that's the difference. They wish for it, but never in that 10, 15, 20 year period did they ever become so repulsed with who they were that triggered enough in them to change. And it's a big thing. It's a really big thing. But now we live in a culture where we can't speak to ourselves in that way, we have to be gentle, and everything's a process, which you're right, it is a process. But at some point, you've just got to become fucking repulsed with the situation you've built around yourself, repulsed with the person that you've become. I'm not talking about physically, we're not all going to be Anthony Joshua or Greek gods. This is about just being the best you can be, but repulsed at the fact that you've been doing a 9 to 5 for 20 years. And for 20 years, you've dreamed of being a documentary filmmaker. You've dreamed of that since you were 20, and now you're 45, and you've not done a thing about it. Until you become repulsed for allowing that much of your life to elapse, doing something that you were born to do, you will not change. And the people around that do change and do hit those heights, at some point they had a moment of repulsion. And that can be the situation around you as well, not necessarily on a individual level. I mean, do you think that Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or Gandhi could have achieved the feats that they achieved unless they were repulsed with the society in which they lived? Or repulsed and disgusted with the inequality they saw going on around them? You have to be repulsed, you have to be disgusted, you have to be angered, because to change takes a huge amount of fuel, and the fossil fuel, if you like, of human beings and of human change and growth and betterment, the fossil fuel for all of that is anger, disgust and repulsion.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head, to be honest. I was trying to work something through my fucking mind then, and it's completely gone. Like I was away with the fairies.
It feels uncomfortable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like I get it. It feels uncomfortable to talk like this because we are in a culture that's incredibly soft. But I don't want to go down that road because it's even cliche to talk about like that. But we have got ourselves into a position where to speak brutal truths and brutal honesty is seen as almost malevolent in its own right. Everything has to be gentle. Everything has to be watered down. Everything has to be delivered in a pretty package, and life's too short for that. Life is too short for that. We don't have the luxury of that time. We just don't. We don't. So I believe that the best way of doing any of this, and of to go back to the title of the podcast, the best way of getting anyone to adopt extreme personal responsibility for their own lives is to hit them with the truth in the most brutal way that you possibly can. But then to add on the caveat to that is that as brutal as that message is, and as brutal as the words that we're using now are, if you do that and get through that then life begins. Then fucking growth happens. Amazing things will happen to you when you can take responsibility. Amazing things will occur to you when you can become repulsed with who you are. That's the catalyst for change. That's the catalyst to waking up and looking in the mirror and going, I like who I am. That's a gift. That's a gift that not many people have. So behind the brutality is the life that you would envision for yourself.
So when people look at other people and they think of them as like a role model, because you were saying like Gandhi or these other people,
yeah.
But then I think now, and it's only been in the last 6 months that I realised quite strongly that people looking at certain individuals can't do it in a critical way to understand that you're seeing their very best fucking attribute. They probably have a load of other shit that they're not good at, and then they just think, oh well, I can't do that, so they just fuck it off.
Mm-hmm.
Like I personally just think that's quite a big thing now, that people can't take one bit, like I don't know, someone's really good at X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And then they see that person as their whole demeanour. It's like, oh, they're just fucking amazing. I'll never be able to do that, because they know how flawed they are.
Yeah.
But they don't realise that someone else is just as just as flawed as you, but they just are excellent in that area you might want to be excellent in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Which you mean like kind of people looking at the pinnacle of what they want to do and go, like, I'll never be that guy, so there's no point in me even attempting to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a real thing, but it's bullshit too. I mean, it's a very real thing. Look, there's levels, and what we're talking about is, so, I mean, let's use boxing as a context. You guys do the boxing podcast, right? So you got Anthony Joshua at the top of the heavyweight tree. Well, really was until 8 weeks ago. Right, let's use Joshua as an example. So you got Joshua at the top of the tree, but I want to start boxing too, and I look at my career, you know, and I want to start boxing again now at 39. And I said, well, I'm never ever going to be heavyweight champion of the world. I'm just never going to do that. The logical step, there's no sense there in comparing my ability and my situation to the guy that's at the top of the tree. And why would that stop me from doing it? It would be like you guys going, well, we're never going to be Joe Rogan. I ain't going to get 60 million downloads a month. So let's just make it Mastermind, scrap it. It's pointless.
Yeah.
It's bullshit. I don't get me wrong, it's real. We all feel it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like every time I go to the gym, I see some dude who's bigger than me and more ripped than me and better looking than me, and it's like, oh motherfucker, I would just want to be that guy. I get it, but it's as soon as you do that, that's just a losing battle. You know, and again, it's a cliche, but it's just a losing battle. The comparison should only ever be, and it's terribly cliche, but it's just true. There's no way around it. The battle should always be is I need to be a better person, a better version of me than I was yesterday. And if I can do that, I'm winning. Because as soon as you start looking around, there's always someone that's richer, that's better looking, that's doing your craft better than you. There's people out there that are doing better podcasts. There's people out there that own better barbershops. It's just that if you allow that to stop you doing what you want to do, then you're destined to do a 9 to 5 from now till 60. Yeah. You know, that's it. You know, and then you won't ever find the things that you're uniquely good at. And that's the other thing. I think. You know, everyone starts from different points in life. You know, life isn't fair. The game is rigged. It's not an even playing field. The game is about being the best version of you that you can be, not being the best in your industry or the best at your sport. You know, if I can be, for instance, you know, the best boxer that I can be, well, that's not going to be Anthony Joshua. But if it's the best that I can offer, then nailed. Boom, box off, tick. I was the best I could be in that moment, and that's all that I could be. You see?
Because it's almost you have to look from within, like, as opposed to look from looking at other people and making a judgment of yourself because of that.
Yeah. And I think as well, you got to look at it because I mean I can't remember who I had this conversation with, but I had this conversation with somebody. Well, everybody looks at the world differently, and not everybody has perhaps the motivation that you do, or sees the world the way that you do, or has access to the same books, or you know, everyone came from a loving family like you did, etc., etc., etc. I think we've mentioned this concept before, but the point of it is that we all know, all of us, on a micro level where we can start to fix things for ourselves, no matter how small those changes are. Everybody knows that. Now, for some people, they're huge changes. For some people, they're tiny changes. But everyone has 4, 5, 6 things they could name right now that they could change. Everybody. It doesn't matter about the things that you've been exposed to. You know, it all depends. Again, it comes back to how honest you want to be with yourself. How much you want to say, well, yeah, of course, but, you know, your parents are rich, so, you know, he gave him the money to start up that business, and well, you know, I was raised by a single mum and your mum and dad were at home, so of course, well, you went to a private school, I went to a public school, so of course you've got an advantage on me. You can play that game. And the danger of that game is that the world will listen to you. People will pat you on the back, you know, and you can play that game all day long, and you can hide there, but none of that will change the reality of who you are. It will not change your situation in any way, shape, or form. You know, life isn't fair. The game is rigged. We all know that. So you can sit and bitch about that as much as you want, or you can get on and try to build a life and a personality that resembles something like what you think you're capable of doing.
But when people give you excuses, I will always sit there and just think, not that, don't care, mate, not bothered. Like, you're telling me for you, not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for you to say it out loud, it makes you feel a bit better. But once that's gone, and I always think like, oh shit, when I give excuses, I think, oh yeah, they probably don't give a fuck either.
No.
Because that is the cold hard truth of a lot of stuff is, you talk about yourself, the other person wants to talk about themselves. So your stuff you're saying is not really for them, it's for you. Unless it's like this and it's an actual discussion. Yeah. Day-to-day stuff, it's like, oh, how are you doing? They're waiting for you to go, I'm alright, what about you? And then I go, oh yeah, I was on holiday and this and that and the other. So really the excuses are not really for the...
They're not, but it's, and this is what we just said a few minutes ago, but it's so important, is that the excuses that we have are real. That they're not lies. They're not made up, and that's why people cling to them so much. You know, well, no, I didn't make it for the job. I was late, and just whatever it may be. I can't think off the top of my head, but they're real. The single mother that's got 3 kids and she has no time for anything. That's real. It's real. You know. But who was the woman that wrote Harry Potter? What's she called?
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling was also a single mother when she wrote Harry Potter. You know, so there are examples everywhere. I think one of the best quotes I ever heard, and I can't remember who said it, but it was essentially there are people that have taken the situation that you're now in and complaining about and turned it into a winning situation. So this is the danger with the excuses. The excuses are real. They're not lying. No one's lying to you when they say, I don't have the money to do that. Well, I want to start a podcast. Well, how do I start? This equipment costs £3,000. I don't have that. Find a way. Yeah. Find a way. Make some phone calls. Find a way. Put on a credit card. Call some phone. Find a way. Record it on your iPhone to begin with. The sound quality will be shit. You know, record it any way you can. Find a way. But people don't want to do it. And that's the thing. These excuses are real, and that's why we cling to them so much. Because you can't question my excuses, bro. What I just told you was genuine. It's legit. My child's ill. I've lost my job. They're real. But ultimately, like you say, when you get to the end of your life, so fucking what? So what? That's how brutal. For me, that's how you've got to be. Okay, so what? What did you do to circumvent it?
Yeah. Because
I guarantee you, if the outcome was different, all it means is that you are not completely married to the outcome of that situation. Because if you were, you would find a way. And again, don't get me wrong, I include me in this. You know, I was that guy. I would give you every excuse under the sun, and it was all real. But none of it made a shit bit of difference to who I was. You know, all it did was give me a place to hide and made sure that I never ever moved more than 4 feet away from where I was the year before.
Yeah, do you know what? To go back to the whole like, do something, start something. We did it with the podcast. We just bought the shittiest, crappiest mics. I think you used the first mics. Yeah. You've seen it. So we just started there and went from there. And you know what? You're right. And the second point, well, you made a lot earlier, was the people around you, as long as they don't lie to you. Most people were like, yeah, it's sick, da-da-da. Josh, you know well as well. He messaged us like, love what you're doing. Your audio quality is fucking shit. Yeah. And you need to sort it out. But we needed to hear that. Was like, it's true. He's right. Yeah. Get some different mics. Do something different. Try keep progressing, keep learning, keeps you fucking accountable. It's like saying we committed to do one podcast every week. So it's like, yeah, all right, we have to fucking book people. Yeah. We have to sit down and do this. We have to. Julian has to do the editing every week to do it. Otherwise, no one else cares. If we stops tomorrow, there's not going to be people outside our door like, where's the fucking podcast? We need it. It's not going to happen. But at the same time, we said we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And we do it for us. And this kind of, the podcast made me realise more than anything, if you do something for your fucking self, for you, that you enjoy, you will just keep fucking doing it. And you'll want to get 100%. Better at it and progress. And I guess you feel the same way. Like the podcast has taught us more than what you'd actually see on the surface, I think. Yeah.
And you got to have an end point. You got to have something that you're working to that means you got to have something that's bigger than your excuses are. Because every day there's an excuse. And like every day there was a genuine reason for me not to go to the shop. There's a genuine reason for me not to go to the gym. There's a genuine reason for me to put off spending time with my kids. There's genuine every day. I had 10 genuine reasons to cancel today. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm tired, man. There are so many reasons, but you've got to find something that's bigger than that. You know, you've got to learn to not bullshit yourself, and that's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing in the world, is to not bullshit yourself. It's the hardest thing in the world, because lying's powerful, and that's what bullshit is called. It's called what it is. It's lying.
It makes you feel better as well, doesn't it? If you can justify it to yourself, you can park it in that part of the brain and be like, yeah, don't need to worry about it. But really,
it haunts you though.
Subconsciously, it's down deep.
Yeah, it makes you feel better. It makes you feel better for the event or the situation you got yourself out of, but it comes back to haunt you. Especially if you're 10% self-aware, because you can't live with that. It's almost like you've got someone in your head that's constantly trying to catch you up, and you're running away from that real self, just constantly trying to run away. And it exhausts you. If you're a grown man that's even remotely self-aware, that has even just a modicum of ambition, you can't keep running away from that second person in you, that better person in you, that's trying to push you on.
Do you think self-awareness is a rare trait?
Incredibly rare. I think it's incredibly rare. And it's rare for 2 reasons. One, because we keep saying it, but it's true, because there's so many places to hide. If you can identify with certain groups or certain affiliations, well, you don't have to be self-aware, because the group does the thinking for you. You don't have to be self-aware. And the other reason it's so difficult is because people just don't go deep enough into their levels of self-awareness. They just don't go deep enough. And the reality is, you have, I'm talking generally here, you have no fucking idea who you are. But you say that to somebody and they will become very offended. How dare you tell me I don't know who I am? But the reality is, you have no fucking clue who you are. You're not the same person now you were 3 years ago. You don't know who you are. Most people that you meet are a combination of other people's ideas, other people's memes, other people's ambitions, other people's clothing, other people's musical tastes, the opinions of other people. They are not, in any sense, an individual. Now, that's understandable, and that's fine. And we all start off like that, all of us. You meet some teenager that's an individual, it doesn't happen. But because that gives us an incredible stopgap in which we can rest there. You know what I mean? So the main reason is people just don't go deep enough. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned in the last 5 or 6 years. How deep do you really want to go into understanding who you are? How deep do you want to go? How deep are you prepared? And the reality is, the deeper that you go, the more you find parts of yourself that you just will not like. You'll find parts of yourself that are really nasty, that are really malevolent, that are really capable of awfulness. Like you said, you have thoughts you don't want to share. And the reason you don't want to share them is because they're fucking awful, hideous, ugly, perverted thoughts. Exactly, but that's not you. That's everybody. Yeah. But we don't know how to deal with that, And it's what Carl Jung, the amazing psychologist, spoke about. Is he referred to that as the shadow? So what we do is we try to find a way to bring out that darkness in us, but to use it for the good and integrate it into who we are, rather than trying to push it to one side. So how deep do you want to go? And unless you're prepared to go deep, you will never be anything other than arbitrarily different to anybody else around you. And you know that. It's you get on call then any Saturday night. Everyone, they look the same, they think the same, they drink the same, they're listening to the same films, they're listening to the same music, watching the same films, they're going to the same concerts. Yeah, they have trivial things that differentiate themselves from the next person. But it's just trivial. Essentially the same person. And how many people do you meet where you can look at the way they're dressed, or you can hear them say, I'm left-wing or right-wing, or I'm a vegan, and you would be able to construct 85-90% of that person's personality based just on that.
Yeah.
Because there's so little differential now in terms of from one individual to the next.
Yeah, do you know what? I used to think like that, but I don't really know why, but I've definitely developed a bit of I will give people the benefit of the doubt.
Oh, now. For sure. I'm not advocating that you just put people in a box.
But yeah, it probably would put them on a worse starting point. If someone was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm right wing," I'd be like,
it's like a little bell.
Give you the
yeah.
I'm really gonna struggle to give you the benefit of the doubt, but let's give it a go. Do you know what I mean?
But then the interesting thing, you're right. But then the interesting thing is, why would you struggle to give them benefit of the doubt?
Well, it's just because of my own preconceptions, and I understand that. That's why I would sit and have that conversation. Yes. But many people wouldn't.
No, they wouldn't, because there's no depth of thought anymore, or at least if there is, it's incredibly rare. That genuine desire to understand. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just to label things, to actually understand. And that happens collectively, but it happens on an individual level as well. Yeah. So unless you're prepared to really try to grasp, why do I do the things I do? Like you said earlier on, why do I put off doing the things that I know would drastically improve my life? Why? What is it in me that's putting that off? I know that all I've got to do to get where I want to be is do A, B, and C, and do that consistently for 2 years. But you don't. You play video games, you smoke weed, you go out, you do cocaine, you do stupid stuff. Why? And how many people genuinely say, right, I want to know why. I'm going to spend the next 2 months, I'm going to go deep. Who am I? Why do I think these things? Why do I just say that? Why do I avoid conflict? Why am I so agreeable? Why am I not agreeable? And to really figure out why you do what you do. And then you become a real person. Then you become someone that's a force for good, at least in your own life. Most people are a force for good, even in their own lives. You think about how fucked up that is.
So do you think once people look at these truths and we look at these truths ourselves, is there a part of us that needs to accept that person as well?
How do you mean?
So in terms of, I have these fucked up thoughts, or these things go through my head or whatever, but that's not who I am, kind of thing, And how do you kind of build on that?
I would argue that is who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is who you are. So this is a real fascinating concept for me. So, all right, let me ask you guys a question. How would you define a good man? What's a good man to you?
It's based on his actions of what he does
Mhm.
with his life, how he treats the people around him, and yeah, I'd say based on his actions.
Okay.
How you judge someone.
So you wouldn't make the argument that people are naturally good.
No, I wouldn't. But I wouldn't say people are naturally
Okay,
bad. I would just say you're like anyone I would meet is like a blank piece of paper, and they have their own, way to draw their own personality in front of me over time. That's what I would say.
Okay. But yeah, you're right. So to be a good man or good at anything, okay, but let's use the example of being a good man. That requires you to constantly update that status. So you can do good things but be a bad person. Yeah? You don't tell your girlfriend that you love her, when you first have that realization and never mention it again. And then go, yeah, but I told you to begin with. You've got to constantly update that status. To be good is a verb, it's a doing word, it's an action. You have to constantly do things that update that status that you're a good man. Now, can you be a good man by default? No, you can't be a good man by default, in my opinion. To be a good man, you have to be intimately aware of your capability to be a bad man. That's what makes you a good man in the first place. Because to be good, to be a genuinely good man, requires the resistance of all of that evilness inside you, all of those negative thoughts that you don't act on. It's the not acting on that darkness that makes you a good man. If you are good by default, then what is that goodness? It has no resistance. It just exists for itself. And I know people like that. But those people, they're useless people. It's not goodness. It's just a default setting that they can't be anything else. They're just like a domesticated house cat. Really good men, and you know this if you look around you, the really, really good men, the men that we really admire, are the men that are capable of bad things, but they choose not to. Because they know it would harm them and their families and their societies and their cultures, but they're capable of it, but they don't do it, and that's what makes someone a good man. You have to constantly update that. You have to be engaged. Being a good man is a fight, and you have to be constantly engaged in the fight. You don't get to want to do things and then walk away from it. It's overcoming the worst part of yourself. If there's no resistance, then there's no fight. If there's no resistance, there's no change. So it's that resistance, it's that constantly attempting to overcome the worst parts of yourself that make you good.
No, I agree with that. I'm kind of talking about that this week. We're saying, me and James having a conversation and saying, you kind of know deep down inside when you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, or when you're doing something good. Like we all have that gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's exploring that, isn't it? And going deep into that. And David Goggins talks about it, going deep inside and seeing these things and.
And well, look. I mean, look at. I think I've mentioned this to you guys before. But look at the superhero movies. Okay, so you look at Batman and the Hulk. I'm not a fan of these movies, but they're paradigms for our time, if you like. So you look at Batman, who is a narcissist. Essentially, he's a narcissist. He's a womanizing narcissist. James Bond is a womanizing narcissist. The Hulk has an anger problem that's so extreme that it requires a woman to calm him down, to channel that anger. He then uses that anger for good to fight the bad guys. Batman takes the narcissism and the nastiness that's helped him to become the billionaire, and he uses that and harnesses it for good to fight the bad guys. These are all deeply flawed people. They're all deeply flawed people. But without those flaws, they couldn't exhibit the goodness that they exhibit. And you see that everywhere. You have to be touched by malevolence in order to fight malevolence. Look at the soldiers in World War II. We talk about the atrocities of World War II, and obviously they're very real. Now, the soldiers on our side committed atrocities, but those atrocities were done for a moral purpose. They killed, they maimed, they had to do things that haunted them, but they did them for the moral good. But they were capable of them. When the moment came calling and the purpose was justified, they were capable of them. They had to be. That's what made them good men.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
You have to be capable. You have to be capable of malevolence and nastiness and evil to be a good man. Otherwise, what are you overcoming? I'll give you a really simple example. Let's imagine. Let's think of a really good-looking guy. Let's imagine Brad Pitt. What if I give you this example before? So let's say there's Brad Pitt on the one side and there's Piers Morgan on the other side. Okay. So here you've got these. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. So you've got an incredibly attractive man. Okay. Let's be honest. Has his pick of any woman on the face of the earth would want to sleep with Brad Pitt. Okay, generally speaking. And you have Piers Morgan, who probably has very, very little opportunities. Brad Pitt and Piers Morgan, for example's sake, have both been married to their partners for 20 years. Okay. Neither one of them have strayed. They've both been faithful men to their wives. Brad Pitt has had his faithfulness to his wife tested by the world's most beautiful and successful women on an almost daily basis for 20 years. Piers Morgan has been faithful to his wife for the same amount of time, for 20 years. But he hasn't had a single opportunity to stray. Which one is the more moral man? Piers Morgan is moral by default. You haven't sinned, but you haven't had the opportunity to sin. So you haven't really been tested. The opportunity hasn't been there. Brad Pitt's had the opportunity to sin on a daily basis for 20 years and he's resisted it. He's proven his worth. That's a moral attribute because it's been tested. There was resistance. You don't get to be good without resistance. You see what I mean? You're just neutral.
No, you're right. It's like me turning pro and never having a fight and saying, well, I retired unbeaten, so better record than AJ. I never lost.
Yeah. But it's Nietzsche referred to it. It's moral cowardice, is what it is.
Yeah.
It's saying, well, I don't hurt you because I choose not to. When you just don't have it in him to hurt you. So you take the moral essence and you push that forward. And what you're really saying is, I'm not capable of it. That's what it is. It's moral cowardice. We hide behind the fact that we don't do certain things when the reality is we don't have it in us to do those things.
Yeah, it's pretty deep, man.
It's really deep, but this is where you find out who you really are. Yeah. Who are you really? Because when you unlock these doors, and this can be a lifelong journey, but when you unlock these doors, that's when you really start to man up. That's when you really start to get your shit together. That's when you really start to push forward in the direction that you always imagined that you would. Because people don't go this deep into who they are. They don't really find out why they do the things that they do, why they say the things they say. Why do I think the way that I think? You know? And the deeper you're prepared to go, the more you will find the answers to that. And if you can take those answers and harness them, you know, and make peace with them and find a way to integrate that nastiness into the goodness that exists in you, then you become a real force. You become a real force. And actually, until you do that, I would argue that you're not an individual. Like, until you really do that, you're just part of the madding crowd. You know, you may be slightly ahead of the rest of the crowd, but you're not really an individual until you've done that process.
So, what, for me, hearing it, developing it when I'm thinking, is essentially saying, create a vision of the person you really want to be, and just work and just say, like, would the ideal me do that?
Yes.
Would the ideal me say this?
Essentially, yeah.
Does that guy want to be skip the gym in the morning? No, he doesn't. So maybe that's the only way you can really do something day to day. And you'll never probably get there because it's an ideal.
Yes.
But at least you'll have a yardstick.
Yeah.
But then you definitely must have to detach your ego from like your development, because otherwise that's just always gonna ping around in your head like as a thing. Because if your ego is too attached to you, and then something goes wrong, everything goes with you.
Well, doing this sort of process, by definition, it needs you to utterly abandon that sense of ego, because you're going to find out things about you that you don't like. You know, you can't have an ego attached to that. You know, it's like even me with King Kobe. You know, I'm not a good businessman. Like and that's not fake humility. I'm not a good businessman. I'm just not. I've got good people around me that advise me well. I'm not a good businessman. You know, and I think I mentioned this the first time I ever met you guys, is that I would hide the fact that I wasn't a great businessman, and I wasn't even attempting to become a great businessman by saying, yeah, but I treat the guys really well. Yeah, but I take them out. Yeah, but we do really cool stuff. It's like, well, yeah, you do, and that's good, and that's admirable. Okay, but there's this whole other side to your business that you're ignoring, and you're hiding the fact you're not dealing with that because you've got these 3 or 4 attributes that are good. You know, and that's exactly what I did. So you have to abandon that sense of ego. You have to abandon it. I'm not a good businessman. It appears I am. We have 4 shops. We're successful. We make good money. Well, I'm not great at that. You know, I've got people around me that are great at that, and they, you know, cover up my sins, if you like. But I have no sense of ego when it comes to that. Whilst maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I think I would. But what do you mean I'm not a good businessman? I've got, you know, employed 10 guys, 12 guys, we're doing this. I'm clearly a good businessman, you know? But when I really dissected my involvement in it, I went, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're good at some stuff, and that's important, and it needs that. But there's this whole host of things you're not really fucking good at. You know, you have to get rid of your ego. You have to. But you can't take responsibility for yourself in any serious way whilst you're attached to an image of yourself that isn't true. And that's part of the danger of becoming someone that you're not really, is the more you sell the version of yourself to the world that you portray every day, the more you sell that, the more you believe it's real. The more you believe that's actually who you are, you know? I did that when I was a boxer. You know, I remember I think I was 13 or 14, and I had my second fight in a car showroom in Malton. And, you know, I thought I was Mike Tyson. I thought I was the baddest kid that had ever stepped into a boxing ring. And, you know, in the gym, I was amazing. On the bags, I was amazing. The pads, I was amazing. And, yeah, people blowing smoke up my ass. And I got all my friends to come and watch me have this fight. And I made my mum and dad buy me this expensive robe that we got kind of custom made and stuff. And I was more concerned about my ring walk music than I was about my technique. And I boxed some kid, I can't remember what his name is, and I got knocked out in 13 seconds. Like, knocked out cold. Like, I woke up in Malton Hospital with my best friend, Frank Tarr, stood by the side of me, just going, oh, you got knocked out. And then I had to go to school, and I never forget that. It was one of the most, even that, one of the most humbling moments of my life, you know. And even then at 13, 14, it's like, I got it straight away. I was concerned with the wrong things, completely the wrong things. And, you know, I walked into a situation that I was underprepared for. But I gave off this image of being this great boxer. I tried to run before I could walk, you know, and I believed it. I bought into my own hype. And you see that all the time, don't you? With celebrities, with fighters, with athletes. You buy into your own hype and you end up believing it. And, you know, sooner or later, life will come and it will humble you. So it's better that you humble yourself now in the privacy of your own mind, in the privacy of your own home, than you got there into this, you know, the world stage and get humbled, because it will happen.
How important is it to then do that, reflect like that, but reflect on the people around you? Because it's a common thing. Like, it's come up on recently. It's come up a lot. Like, network is your net worth, and yeah, people see it as like a one. Oh, be around rich people and you'll be fucking rich. All right, be around.
If only it was that simple.
Be around a load of wankers, you probably turn into a bit of a prick. Like, they'll just be, oh, that's all right to do that. So it's more of a, like, your net worth as a human.
Yes.
Can be from your network. So what I'm saying is, if you have this realization of, oh, I want to be this great person, check in with your friends. Like, if they don't want to be like that, it's going to be way harder.
It's going to be impossible.
So what? Because I think Rosie said it, didn't she? Like, when she stopped partying and wanted to go full steam ahead on bodybuilding,
yeah,
she cut everyone off.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm not partying then. Done. It's like, yeah, it was hard, but I had to do it.
And what happened? She became an IFBB pro.
Yeah, exactly. It was in like 2 years or something.
And she probably, and I think, yeah, I know Rosie really well. She probably could have been IFBB pro maybe 2 or 3 years sooner. You know, we massively underestimate the net effect that our circle has on us. Like, my circle is tiny. It's tiny. I mean, genuinely, less than one hand I can count the people that I would call at 3 a.m, or the people that I would call for advice. So the people that were in my life before, and this is the thing that people don't understand. So, like, 4 or 5 years ago, you know, when we first started King Kobe, we started going to be 10 years, but 4 or 5 years ago when we built the team, you know, those guys were my best friends. I spent all of my time with those guys, and it was one of the happiest times of my life. Like, I've got great memories, but the reality was, at one point in time, there came a natural split where it's like, right, your life's going that way and my life's going that way. Now, I'm not casting any judgment on what you do or how you live life, but my life needs to go in this direction. And in order for me to do that, I have to cut people off. And it's not an ego thing. It's not that we've fallen out. It just has to be, thanks for the memories. I've had a great time, but I've got things in me that I need to achieve. And I know I can only achieve them if I'm either A, alone, or B, surrounded by people who are of the same mindset as me. You know, and it's a cliche, but you have to do that. You know, you go and look at Anthony Joshua's circle and see who's in there. You go look at Gary Vee's circle and see who's in there. You're not going to find fools in there. Because this is the thing. People just don't take their existence seriously. They just don't take their lives seriously. They fill it with superficial things, like, you know, whatever fucking t-shirt they're wearing, or the night out that's coming up, or you know, the new girl in town, or getting that, you know, that Range Rover on a PCP payment. They focus on the wrong things. People don't take their lives seriously enough. Who you surround yourself with matters. It matters. I didn't surround myself with great people for a large part of my life, and my life suffered as a result. Without a doubt, it did. If I'd have been surrounded by better people, maybe I would have done more. But that's on me. It's my responsibility. You know, I chose who I hung around with. I've got to take responsibility for that. But people just don't take their lives seriously enough. This is not a game. You know, this is not a game. And we have a lot of grown men and grown women, for that matter, masquerading as adults, but behaving like children. You know, this is a serious business. You know, success is a serious business. Becoming better is a serious business. Finding out who you are is a serious business. Learning to take extreme personal responsibility for yourself is a serious business, and you better get serious about it, because the world will eat you up, and you'll be the 50-year-old guy in the fucking club.
Yeah. So I want to. You want to say something?
I think we touched on this before, but to touch on it again.
Yeah.
Do you think the older sort of two, three generations ago that these kind of people had that on lockdown more than we do, or do you think now people are kind of a little bit more woke to their own consequences and awareness of themselves in society, of doing the better thing? Or
no, I think people are less aware now.
Yeah,
I think people are less aware.
More places to hide because of that. Or?
Yeah, that, and obviously, I get bored talking about the negative effects of social media, but it's there. Is that now we have shiny things to aim for, and those shiny things are everywhere. Every time you turn on the screen, there's a shiny thing to aim for, and all of these things just keep you from pursuing the true thing that you should be pursuing. So now I think we are less centered on ourselves as individuals than we've ever been, ever. We are more about. You ask anybody, not anybody, but generally speaking, ask someone to tell you who they are, and they will give you a list of titles. They will say, I'm a father, they'll give you their job title, they'll give you their age, they'll give you their birthplace, all of which are incidental. None of those things describe you as a human being. None of those things are relevant, necessary to your existence. So I think now more than ever, we are more detached than we've ever been from our individual sense of purpose. And we are becoming increasingly a culture and a society of collective groups, and they're collective groups that stay apart from each other, and are warring with each other all the time. They're places to hide. So no, I don't think it's a new thing, but it's worsening. It's worsening. And the scary thing about it is I don't think it's going to change. I don't think this is going to change at all. I think as a society we're on a downward spiral, and I don't think that this is ever going to get any better. I think we need certain voices in society that we do have with Jonathan Haidt and Jordan Peterson, these kind of guys that are preaching to people about the importance of individuality, the importance of finding yourself amongst that crowd. And those voices are needed more than ever. But generally speaking, I don't think we're in a position where we're going to get any better than we are right now. Collectively.
But all right, to flip it and just play devil's advocate, the only other good side of social media is like the collective of the knowledge and the opinions that can be on there.
Yes.
Opposed to when you were saying 2-3 years ago, that bubble would have been small as fuck. That's why people had terrible prejudices about certain people or races or religions or whatever, because it's like that small.
Yeah.
Like, few opinions here. He's pretty smart. He's quite sound. Let's listen to him, and everyone just believes that. But now it's like a bigger perception. It's like why people's spots keep getting blown up on the internet for like Edward Snowden or these people. That's why people know this stuff now, because it can just be out there. So I guess there is a positive effect, but there's also too many. There is a negative, but then it comes back to you. You're responsible. You are responsible for what you follow, what you don't follow, what you like, what you read. I see a news article and it's got like some clickbait title. I'm like, I'm not going to read it because it'll be fucking bullshit, and I'll be pissed off with myself that I've clicked it. And it's the same with everything else. Like I remember when this was a lot younger back, when I was working my first job, and I remember following Piers Morgan. I used to be like proper into football then. Like I'm not as much now, but it used to just fuck me off, and I'd be like, these guys are fucking cunt. And I thought, I could just block him though. I had this realisation like, I can just block him and I can just not follow him, and then he pretty much doesn't exist. I'm not bump into him and talk to him about football. So it's like people could just fucking do that. Like I get it. Like it sounds kind of stupid, but if someone got pissed off at us for saying something on podcast, like, hey, don't listen to it then. Turn the fucking thing off.
Well, listen, that's kind of how perverse the culture is. Is that what you've just said there is absolutely 100% balls on accurate. But you still had to add the caveat of it. It sounds kind of stupid that you can just turn it off, because you know that people would take what you've just said and attempt to twist it and attempt to make it much deeper than that. It's like, and you talk about going into outrage culture and victim culture, which again is another way of avoiding personal responsibility. Cyberbullying. Turn the fucking phone off. Turn the computer off. This guy's triggering me on Twitter. Don't follow him. Okay. Take some responsibility for the things that you are allowing yourself to participate in. People. It blows my mind that it's any more complicated than that. I'm not naive. There are nuances to life and there is context to life. I get it. But when we're speaking in general terms, You choose how you interact with the world. You choose how you interact with it. If you don't like something, move away from it. If you don't like it enough, fight against it. You know, put a counterpoint out there. Do something about it, or walk away. But don't continue to engage in something. But to come back to your other point, you're right. I'm not saying social media is an overwhelmingly positive thing. There's no doubt about that. But we're fucktards, and we use it in the most ridiculous of ways. You know, like 80%, 82%. You know, I'm pretty sure that's correct. 82% of all internet searches are for porn. 82%. Like, the internet's amazing. Like, we couldn't live without the internet. The internet is unreal. Like, I could like even get in here. You know, my phone told me where to go turn by turn. Mm-hmm. We take it for granted. That's unreal. Yeah. Like, our grandparents would have their minds blown by, you know, the technology that we've got at our disposal now. But 82% of all interaction with the internet is to jerk off. You know, the internet's an amazing thing. You don't get me on the internet, but we're idiots.
The internet's amazing, but people are not.
No, we're idiots. And Instagram, and look, I was the same, man. I went through Instagram. You go from my Instagram account now, you know, and I tried to lessen it, but I get sucked in too. Is I would constantly look at these girls, and guys too, to be fair, that would be there with a picture of their six pack or some, you know, really beautiful girl with her ass and a G-string, and there'd be some ridiculous self-help quote underneath it. You know, I'm like, I hate these people. Like, I'd have more respect if you said, my ass looks great in this. Boom, there you go. I might disagree with the context, but you've owned it, so I can't say anything. And I was like, I'm following loads of these girls. And I'm double tapping. And I'm part of that problem. So I had to go through and unfollow, you know, loads of those accounts. And that's, again, a part of being personally responsible for. How much of the culture that I deride and criticise and despise and hate and wouldn't want my children to be a part of, how much of that culture do I participate in? Even passively. And most of the way in which we interact with our culture is passively. And that's something dangerous too, because you believe that because it's a passive interaction, it's not really doing any harm. But I was engaging that. I was double-clicking on the same people that I was criticising. You know, it was hypocrisy on my part. So the internet's an amazing thing. Instagram is all amazing things, but we're fucking idiots, and we use them for clickbait and for porn and for cats and for.
We have this conversation.
It's for me, it feels like definitely like a double-edged sword, because as well, then you look at the corporations, the industry, how everything's packaged down, so condensed. You know, you look at the news; it's free clickbait titles to try and get an emotion and a reaction out of you.
And it's not the news anymore; it's just an opinion piece.
Yeah,
you know, everything's an opinion piece. There's no news there anymore,
no,
and that's why.
Behind it.
No facts behind it, and this is why, perhaps now more than ever, it's increasingly hard to become an individual, because, you know, in terms of figuring out what it is we believe and then trying to back that up, we go to these, you know, we go to social media or to the internet, and the information we get is so distorted, and one expert disagrees with another expert. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, there was an expert, and whatever the expert said, boom, case closed. And now there's 10 experts, and they've all got 10 different opinions. You know, so trying to get to the bottom of what we believe socially and culturally is incredibly difficult. You know, and again, it takes real work, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't do it. It takes real work. You know, it takes real work to figure out who you are and where you stand, and then to pick a course. And I think that's the thing that puts a lot of people off doing this, is that it's difficult. You know, and it's easier just to get dressed and go for a night out, or it's easier just to, you know, to put on the TV or put Netflix on, because thinking's difficult. And this isn't a new thing, you know. When Martin Luther King's quotes in the 50s was, "Nothing pains some people more than having to think," and it's true. There are people, you know, Bertrand Russell said exactly the same thing in the 70s. Nothing pains people more than having to think, and people think that they think. They think that they think. But when you break it down, they're not really thinking about anything other than the immediacy of their current surroundings and their current situation. Or perhaps it's what's for tea. But there's no real existential thought. Where do I want to be in 2 years' time? How do I want to raise my child? What belief system do I want him to have? How do I want to be seen by people? What kind of boss do I want to be? What words do I want spoken at my funeral? How do I want to interact with the world? When I interact with strangers, how would I have them interpret me? You know, these are real questions. And these things, the interesting, these things happen to us whether we think about them or not. Yeah? But the more thought you put into it, the more that you have control over your interaction with the world. It's deep.
Yeah. And you know, the same as well, if you don't think about it, you're kind of living in a ignorant bliss with reoccurring patterns that
you'll just do what's
around you.
Easiest as well.
Yeah.
Like the easy thing or the first reaction. every time it'll just be like a.
Well, you're not real until you do that.
spiral.
But it sounds brutal, but you're not real. You're not a real person until you do that. I mean, who are you? In a very real sense, who are you? If you don't engage in critical thought, if you don't concern yourself with existential questions. And I'm not talking, we've all got different levels of intellect and different levels of intelligence, so I get it. But who are you if you can't construct at least a macro narrative of the world? You're nobody. You're just somebody that is existing, going through the motions. And we see that everywhere, I did exactly the same thing, so I'm not casting judgment, but you are not a real person in any real sense. And by that I mean a person that can be in the world and can have some kind of authority, that can push themselves and their identity, that can control their immediate surroundings. You're not a person of consequence until you can engage in critical thought. But engaging in critical thought isn't enough, because that's just step one. Step two is engage in critical thought, analyze the outcome of those thoughts, and then be able to accept responsibility for them. Once you've done that, then you're a real person. Then you'll have some impact on the world. Until then, you won't. You can't. It's not possible. It's not possible. You buy into the neon lights and the trinkets, and you think your life is real because you go into the parties and you have a job and you have a car and you interact with the world and you think it's real, but it's not. There's no difference between you and the other 7 billion people on the planet until you engage in critical thought, until you make your being real and put it out there. You're not a real person.
So what are some of the things then that can be a catalyst for starting to make change and pulling that plaster off? So for me, I'm not saying I'm an example of anything, but looking at my own, I guess, my own mental health, I've realised that I need to exercise. That's one thing I've realised over the last 15 years. If I don't exercise, I get
I'm the
really
same.
dark place.
Yeah, I go downhill.
Everything goes crap.
Yeah.
Mood, everything.
Mm.
And sometimes, loads of times I don't want to work out. I hate doing it, but I've found by forcing myself to do it, I'll feel better throughout my day once I know it's been locked off and done. Yeah. So what are some of the things that can be a catalyst for change? I know definitely exercise can be one. Yeah,
exercise is a catalyst for change. I think that we've mentioned it before. I think the biggest catalyst for change is disgust and repulsion. Disgust and repulsion and shame. I think anything other than that, and don't get me wrong, I know exactly what you're saying. So the exercise is great. I'm the same as you. If I don't exercise for 2 or 3 days in a row, I can feel my mind just getting into a dark place. And it's non-specific, but your mood drops. You can feel it, can't you? It's not good. So exercise is a great thing to be involved in. Spending time with your family is something you should do. Anytime my mood is low, which is frequently, believe it or not, all I've got to do is spend 15 minutes with my children, and I'm a different man again. And that can just keep me going for hours and hours and hours. It softens me. It's essential to my happiness. But again, those things are nice. Going on walks, all those kind of things are all nice, but they're not deep enough. I think the biggest catalyst for change. I had this conversation with Sophia that you had on a while ago when she was talking about the fat shaming thing. And I was saying, do you know what? I believe that actually embarrassment and shame are two of the biggest motivators that human beings have. And we shouldn't be we shouldn't be timid about using embarrassment and shame as real world motivators for people. Anytime I've been embarrassed or ashamed, I haven't wanted to feel those things again. So I've changed. Don't get me wrong, there's ways and means of doing it. I'm not talking about doing this in a finger pointing type way. But I think we need to find a way individually, and the people in our lives to encourage us as well, to get to a point where we can look objectively at our own lives and become disgusted or embarrassed or ashamed, and use those things to propel us into real meaningful change. Meaningful change doesn't happen without it. I would love to hear somebody argue with me on this point, but I genuinely don't believe real change happens until you get to that point. You have to be repulsed. You have to be disgusted to change. You don't have to be disgusted and repulsed. You can be happy with where you are. That's fine. But if you want to enact real lasting change, if you want to be a different person to the man that you are now, and I did 5 years ago when I started doing this journey, I wanted to be a radically different person. And the only thing that helped propel me into action was looking back at the previous 15 years and going, you stupid motherfucker. You fucking idiot. I was disgusted at the man that I'd become. Physically, I'd let myself go. I'd told lies. I'd cheated. I'd not been a nice person. I hadn't been a good brother or a good son. I'd let myself down. I hadn't created a life that represented who I knew I should be. And it disgusted me to my core. It disgusted me to the point where I said, I would rather die than continue living my life as a man that I've been. And that's why I think, sorry, I don't sound like I'm rambling, but we have to get to that point. And that's why I think, yes, exercise is great, spending time with family is great, watching it, these are all great things, like definitely, but they're stage 1 things. And we know it. We know, everyone knows the stage 1 things. Not many people know the stage 2 and 3 things. There's not many people saying that's a great starting point, but we've got to get deeper. You know? So maybe I'm just saying, yeah, start there, but you've got to be prepared to get deeper.
And you know how you're saying that, so you're looking back on those 15 years and you see you could have done things better. Mm-hmm. At the time, did you realise in yourself that, yeah, I could be doing these things better?
Always.
And I'm choosing not to.
Always. And that's part of the repulsion. That's part of the repulsion. There was never, ever, ever, you know, and this is shame on me, but there was never a period in my life when I was unsure of what the right thing to do was. And any time I didn't do the right thing, it's because it was too fucking hard. That simple. It was too hard. It was too hard. Telling a lie was easier than telling the truth. Yeah? Cheating on a girlfriend and giving into that lustful moment was easier than remembering all the great things that girlfriend had done for me for the previous 2 or 3 years. Yeah? And shame on me for that, but that's the reality of it. I never, ever, 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 and I don't believe people when they say this, because most situations are black and white. Most. In terms of moral dilemmas. I never, ever, ever, ever got to a situation in my life or an event where I didn't know exactly what the right thing to do was. And any time I chose against it, it's because I was a coward. It's that simple. And I believe that to be the case for most people. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't caveats or there aren't nuances, and this doesn't apply to everybody, but I think generally, you know what's right and wrong. You know what you should have done. And it's at that point when you say, right, I'm going to cling to these excuses, or am I going to be honest? You know? But that led to my repulsion. Is that I didn't have that. I didn't have the luxury of saying, I just didn't know. You know? In terms of morality, I didn't have that. I don't think any of us do. You know, I can look back now and do things differently in my business and go, well, I didn't know 5 years ago to do my tax return this way or to do social media this way. That's fine. That's legitimate. But I'm not repulsed at the way I did social media 5 years ago. But I'm repulsed at the way that I lived my life 5 years ago. So I think morally we're all aware. But yeah, that led to me being repulsed. And I know I keep banging this drum, but I don't hear anybody else saying it. I hear people giving nice platitudes to people, and I don't think it works. And I think statistically, you know, we can prove it doesn't particularly work because things are getting worse. You know, things are getting much, much worse.
And you know, that's the thing that kind of worries me, you know, for, I guess, the younger generations, you know, the kids growing up, families that don't have that critical sort of thinking to look deep down inside, to make those changes, to even know that those decisions are affecting their kids, all of that, you know, to be aware of that. Absolutely. And it blows my mind to, well, how the fuck is the world going to be a better place?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We had, when I was speaking to Steve Ward the other week, we had a conversation very similar to this, and he made the same point. Like, okay, we as guys, we know we should be engaged in this kind of journey, but there's lots of people out there that they don't know. They just don't know. I didn't know I was meant to think like that or to they didn't know where to start their journey, basically, okay? So, and he's right, not everybody is reading Jordan Peterson, not everybody is doing podcasts, not everyone is lucky enough as you guys are to engage with several different guests and to have your mind expanded, not everybody is in that place. So what I'd like to do is reduce everything down to the most micro level we can possibly reduce it down to, okay? So I gave the example to Steve. I knew a guy when I was a youth counsellor for the NHS. I knew a family and their daughter was a client of mine, so I would go there once a week and we would just talk about her mood, etc, and help her through it, and then I would leave again. And I had a conversation with one of my colleagues who had said that the father of his family, he's a really good man, he's a good guy. And I thought about that, I don't know why, but it stuck with me. And I thought about it, I was looking at the circumstance of this family we're in. And I said to my colleague, why is he a good guy? Why is he a good man? Well, he does the best that he can. You know, he knows he does the best that he can. He's not a particularly bright guy, but he does the best that he can. And I thought about this long and hard, and I thought, no, it's wrong. He's not a good man, and he's not a good father, and these were the reasons why. Here was a man who he hadn't worked for 20 years. Okay, he'd been perpetually on the on benefits for 20 years. There was nothing wrong with him. He'd been off sick with mental health for 20 years. He smoked 60 cigarettes a day. This is all genuine. I'm not making any of this up. He was severely overweight, as was his wife. His wife also hadn't worked for many, many years. They survived solely on benefits. Nothing wrong with the welfare state, by the way, if it's needed. But between the two of them were smoking between 60 and 100 cigarettes a day. They drank red wine every night. They didn't do anything that added to, forget their society, to their own family home. A lot of the problems that their daughter was displaying as my client at the time were directly related to the behaviour of their parents. And I thought about this, and I thought, okay, he's a guy who's not particularly intelligent. So he didn't have access to the things that you or I would. He wouldn't sit down and read a Jordan Peterson book, for instance. But I remember getting into a conversation with him one day after I'd finished with his daughter, because something that had come up with her is she was only 14 and she started to smoke. Okay, and this is something, ironically, that mum and dad were concerned about. So I spoke to them. I said, well, that you're smoking constantly and you smoke in front of her. You know you shouldn't do that, right? Yes. They both acknowledged, no, you're right, I shouldn't do that. And then I was emboldened, I had a good relationship with them, and we got deeper and deeper and deeper. And I said, well, and we could, how about we try and lose some weight? And I said, if your daughter can see mum and dad engaged in this battle of betterment, that would be really good for her mental state. And she, you could do it as a family. This could be a really good motivator. No, you're right. And I knew we need to lose more weight, and I could maybe look at going back to work. It took me 15 minutes of talking to this guy to reveal that he knew full well that there were huge aspects of his life that were negatively affecting his family and his daughter, who was now displaying many of the problems that he was. 15 minutes to unveil the fact that despite his lack of traditional intelligence, he knew full well that there were at least 3 things in his life that he could change that would have a massive net plus effect on his family. So my point in telling you that story is that you don't need to be the most articulate. You don't need to be the most well-read. It doesn't matter where you're starting from. Here was a man who knew full well, stop smoking, lose some weight, try and get a part-time job. That'll have a huge impact on your family. He knew. Within 15 minutes of a conversation, he knew full well. But you get a lot of people who want to show empathy and compassion, go, well, not everybody knows where to start. And no, I'm not asking you to read War and Peace. I'm not saying you should be aware of all of the intricacies of the arguments between existentialism or objectivism, and you should read Carl Jung and Nietzsche. And no, you don't have to do that. That's fine. You know full well there are things in your life you could change tomorrow that would have a huge cataclysmic effect on the way in which your family operates. And this man in that situation knew it. That's why he wasn't a good man, by the way, because he knew it. Now, that doesn't mean that we had the caveat of that. That doesn't mean that you can't fuck up and be a good man. But to be a good man, you've got to be in the fight. You've got to be in the fucking arena. You've got to be on the field. You could be losing that game 10-0. You can be getting this shit kicked out of you, but you've got to be on the fucking field. You can't be in the stands going, these guys are brave. I should probably go down there and join them. It's like that guy, you go on a night out and you get into the fight with your friend, when you're teenagers, and you've always got that one friend who stood in the corner, pretending that he's calling somebody, but not getting involved in the fight. I'm constantly fucking up, constantly. I'm constantly making mistakes, constantly. I believe there is nothing more important than truth, but sometimes I tell lies, or I'm economical with the truth. So I'm not perfect, but what I am is I'm constantly engaged in that process of betterment. I'm in the fight. So the fact that you fuck up and make mistakes is irrelevant to your status as a good man. But you need to be on the fucking field. You need to have some blood on your face. You need to be involved in the battle. You may fail, but if you are on the field, you've won. You've got to be in the fight, Look how many. Let me look at Gatti Ward. No one cares who the loser of that fight was. There are ways to lose nobly. The only way that you genuinely lose is by being that guy who sits there with a perfect stranger and admits within 15 minutes that there's 3 things you could have done 15 years ago that would have had a better effect on the mental health of your daughter, and you've just not done them for no other reason, and you couldn't be fucking bothered to do it. That's the only reason. Now, fail. By all means, fail, but at least be on the fucking field. At least be in the game. That's what makes you a good man.
Yeah, boom.
That's a big point.
Yeah, it's
a good point to end on.
Yeah, that's it. Sick.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Thanks,
again.
man.
Good.